Captain Ibrahim Traore, the President of Burkina Faso, is the continent's youngest leader at 35 years old and is celebrated as the reincarnation of one of Africa's most revered leaders, Thomas Sankara. Maybe by coincidence or something more, Thomas Sankara died in 1987, and a year later in 1988, Captain Traore was born. Both men took over power in Burkina Faso as captains in the Burkinabe military at the age of 34. What is more interesting about Captain Traore is not his coincidence with Thomas Sankara, but his person and rise to power. In this video, you will find out the long power play that began from the time of Thomas Sankara up until Captain Ibrahim Traore became head of state. You will also find out who Thomas Sankara was and why Africa believes Traore is the new Sankara. Many people may ignore Burkina Faso, but it has one of the most complicated power play in the African continent. Let's start from Sankara, who is considered as the first president of Burkina Faso, which before him was known as the Republic of Upper Volta. Sankara came through coup, and after 4 years in power, one of his closest friends and associates, Blaise Compaoré, carried out a coup that took the life of the former. Blaise was in power until the 2014 Burkina Faso uprising, which forced him out of power, introducing General Honoré Traoré as the interim leader of the country. It is important to note that the two Traorés are not related. Now, the politics of the country paving way for Captain Ibrahim Traore is about to become even more interesting. Honoré ruled for just a day before handing over power to Yacouba Isaac Zida, who forcefully took over for 17 days. The next leader, Michael Kafando, ruled for less than a year before Gilbert Diendere took over power in 2015 for days before Sheriff Sai came on board. You would think that by now we are getting closer to Traore, but there is still more drama. Sheriff was in power for only 6 days before Michael Kafanko came in as the country's transitional leader. In 2015, Roch-Marc Christian Kabore became president of the country, and after 6 men, none of whom could stay in power for a year, he held on for 6 years before he was ousted by a coup led by Paul Henry Santiago Damiba. Less than a year into his stay in power, a group of young soldiers, not happy with him and his style of leadership, forced him to step down. And at the forefront of the dissatisfied army elements was none other than the young captain known as Ibrahim Traore. Before this point, Traore was not known in the country but in the military. He has earned his place even though he only joined the armed forces in 2009 after he graduated from the University of Ouagadougou with honors. One of the things that Traore and his men banked on to take over power was the Islamic insurgency that was tearing through the country. They claimed that the government of Damiba failed to nip the insurgency 8 months into his stay in power. By the time Ibrahim Traore took over power, as much as 40% of the country was claimed to be in the hands of non-state forces. Another reason why Traore and others were at the forefront of the fight against the government was because they felt Damiba was not doing enough against the jihadists. There is another side to the story. This is that the junior officers were not necessarily dissatisfied with the style of leadership, but with the way they were treated. It was claimed that their pay was being delayed, and the leader of the Cobra Special Forces, who was detained by the previous government, was not released by Damiba. It is not clear if Traore was a part of the Cobra force, but he leaned on them to get to power. 2 promises Ibrahim Traore made after coming to power was to hold a democratic election in July of 2024 and hand over power back to civilians. Secondly, he promised to get back territories that are under the control of the jihadists. For now, Captain Traore is considered to be the new Sankara. Sankara, who was a young junior officer, did not have any serious education. Once he came to power, he tried to cut ties with the imperialists and forge a new path for Burkina Faso. This was the reason why he changed the name of the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, the land of the upright men. Another thing he tried to do was to cut ties with the French government. In no time, he was assassinated through a coup led by one of his best friends, Blaise Compaoré. It is believed that Blaise was just a tool in the hands of the French government that really wanted Sankara out of power by all means. In fact, the reason given by Compaoré and others who staged the coup was the failing relations with France and Ivory Coast. Compaoré claimed that the death of Sankara was an accident, but not many believed him. Also, as soon as he took over power, he reversed all major decisions made by Sankara, but the name of the country remained. Now, Africa believes that Captain Traore may just be the reincarnation of Sankara, not because of their charismatic charm or even the coincidences about them, but because of their pan-African outlook. Just like Captain Thomas Sankara, Captain Traore is against all forms of neo-colonialism and imperialism. It is because of this that after coming to power, the youngest African leader described African leaders as puppets of the West. He insists African leaders must take control of their countries from Western powers. He added that Africa has all it takes to govern itself to prosperity, but that is only if they cut away from the West. One of his most famous quotes is that a slave who does not rebel against the oppressor does not deserve to be pitied. In 2023, after a coup against the Nigerian president by the military, the United States, France, and other African countries, including Nigeria, cut ties with the country and its military leader, General Salifo Modi. However, Captain Traore led Burkina Faso and joined Mali to throw its weight behind the coup plotters. This is because of his belief that the military can serve as a vehicle for social change in Africa. The only difference between the two men is that while Thomas Sankara was a Christian and a devoted Catholic, the man who is now seen as his reincarnation is a devoted Muslim. Nonetheless, their ideals are the same. Although he did not outrightly cut ties with France like the way Thomas Sankara did, Captain Traore asked the French military troops to leave Burkina Faso and is backing Russia as the country's strategic partner. In a country where power change has never been an issue, and many still have love for Paul Henry Santiago Damiba, who was deposed by Traore, there is still the fear that unless the young leader is able to make the necessary changes in the social and economic lives of the people, and also bring an end to the insecurity in the country, he may also be shown the way out in no distant time. What do you think about Captain Ibrahim Traore? And do you support the recent military takeover in some African countries? Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share.